If you want to keep using heroin, that's your business. If you want to stop using heroin, that's our business. Heroin Anonymous, Western New York. For more information, please visit our website at www.heroinanonymous585.org or call our 24-hour hotline to speak to a sober heroin addict at 585-348-8129.
Hi everybody, and welcome to this week's show of Roc'n Recovery. My name's Carol Michelle, and today I have a co-host on that is very special to me. It's my daughter, Carlee.
Hi, and I'm sure I'm very special to everyone who's watching,
Absolutely.
as I've been on the show numerous times.
Yes, so everybody stay with us. We've got an awesome show coming up. We'll be right back. Hi everybody, thanks for joining us today on Roc'n Recovery. We're going to be talking about stigma, the stigma that affects addiction on the show today. And I got a question not too long ago, and somebody was asking me whether or not the stigma has been reduced over the last few years. What do you think about that question?
I think a lot of things about that question.
Okay.
I think awareness about addiction and substance use disorder has gone up. Like, there's more awareness, there's many more groups, grassroots organizations that have done a lot to bring about awareness, but I don't think the recovery community has yet to break the stigma as people think that they have. Like, people know what addiction looks like now, and people know that it's not just, you know, your typical idea of what addiction is or who an addict is. But I think we still have a long way to go to show that, you know, recovery is happening and that people recover, because I think that there's still stigma around addiction.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But backing up to something that you said, as far as the awareness goes, I think that there is still a lack of awareness as far as what somebody who has substance use disorder looks like. Because when I look at the news or the media, I always see the same faces, the same stereotypical person, you know, in the majority of all of the ads that you see for addiction. Have you found that to be true?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. I think we still have a long way to go with awareness, but I think more and more we're doing more for awareness. But I think we still have a long way to go. But in terms of the stigma, I don't think we scratched the surface yet with that.
Yeah. Well, the stigma of addiction, that's one of the horrible things about that is a lot of times it stops people from getting the help that they need, especially with family members.
I was going to say family members. I think parents especially have, you know, there's a stigma on the parents, like, what you could have done better, or you should have raised your child this way or that way, or you shouldn't have done this, and like, that's terrible.
Yeah.
No, I don't think we've done really anything to address that in this community.
Another thing that I noticed is when families are talking about a loved one's addiction, they tend to take the guilt on. A lot of families tend to take on all of the guilt that goes with trying to fix somebody that you can't fix, like not having the control over them. And I think that, I mean, if we could just kind of talk more freely about it, I think it would allow families a quicker path to healing.
Yes, and I think too, in rooms and in areas that are like safe for families to talk about that stuff, like 12-step groups for family members, I even noticed that there's a stigma within the rooms that the parent or loved one puts on themselves, because, you know, in 12-step, whether that's, you know, for the person with the substance use disorder or the family member, it's about yourself when you're sharing. But so many times and so often we see the family member talking about their loved one that's struggling with addiction. And it's like, that's not what the room is there for. The room is there for you to heal and for you to get the help that you need. But they don't, I don't know if it's that the parents don't think that they're worthy of that, or that they're able to do that because their loved one is still suffering and they want to make sure they're okay first instead of putting themselves first. But there's still there's like a self-stigma there, like a self-induced, self-judgment, that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. And we, like you said, we have a long way to go. One thing that I noticed too is it seems to be a common thought for families still that if my loved one gets help, everything's going to be fine. I'll be great. Everything will be okay. And it doesn't work that way, you know? A lot of times in addictions, there's so much harm that's done, betrayal and stealing, and all kinds of different factors kind of filter in, right? And they affect relationships. And it takes a lot of effort to be able to get through that and recover from that for people who have substance use disorder and for their families.
I agree, and I think too what you said was so important because, you know, just because your loved one gets treatment or gets into treatment and gets the help they need and they're abstinent doesn't mean that the behaviors are going to change either, unless they're working on their recovery. So they could still be a jerk, like, you know, I hate to say it like that, but I know a lot of people.
You're not talking about anybody specific.
No, I know a lot of people, and I was one of those people that when I first got into recovery, if I wasn't making the steps to change as a person and become a better version of me, I was still a jerk. You know, I was acting out on certain behaviors. I wasn't treating people with kindness and didn't have any patience or understanding and like compassion for anybody. So I think that it's not just about, when they get into treatment and once they put down the drugs, it's going to be perfect. Phew.
Right?
But that's the first step. Like, that has to happen before self-discovery and self-awareness and self-improvement happen, but that has to happen too.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's so true. And oftentimes in early recovery, we are so self-centered. It's all about me, and I mean, I think that's pretty commonplace across the board. I haven't seen the exception to the rule as far as that goes.
Heck, I've been in recovery for over 5 years and I can still be selfish. So.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? You know why you say that? You say that because you're always like checking your motives and checking and I love that. That's awesome that we can recognize when we're being selfish or selfless. Right?
Even with multiple years, and even if you've been away from the drug and have been in recovery for a long time, it's important to have that self-awareness and just recognize, like, am I doing this for the right reasons? Or is there like an underlying motive? Like you said, like, you still need to check yourself. As Anthony would say, check yourself before you wreck yourself.
All right. Well, we're going to go to a break, but we'll be right back.
If you want to keep using heroin, that's your business. If you want to stop using heroin, that's our business. Heroin Anonymous, Western New York. For more information, please visit our website at www.heroinanonymous585.org or call our 24-hour hotline to speak to a sober heroin addict at 585-348-8129.
Hi everybody, and welcome back to Roc'n Recovery. Today I'm here with my daughter Carlee, and we've been talking about stigma. The stigma that you associate with addiction.
Yes.
Right? So what about the stigma that somebody faces when they're looking to help themselves and get into treatment, but maybe they have a job, right? And they're afraid of what their employer might think or the other employees might think. Do you think that can stop somebody from getting the help that they need?
I think so.
Do you?
I think so. I mean, I've never been in that position, so I can't say if that would have stopped me. but I know that it's very possible that it could stop somebody. I mean, I had a stigma even without the materialistic things like the job and all of that stuff, because I thought I had a misconception about what recovery was. I didn't realize that young people could recover. So even I had a stigma in a way towards what recovery was and getting the help that I needed because I thought I was too young. So I think to some degree, everybody who has a substance use disorder faces some sort of like stigma with themselves and their use.
Well, let me ask you this question. When you decided to get into recovery, you were in high school. What about, did you have any fears of what your classmates would think and the stigma that follows getting into recovery?
Yeah. Well, I was told to change people, places, and things, which is very hard to do when you're still in high school because you can't change the people you're in class with and you can't change the place of high school because you need to graduate. And I think, you know, when they said change people, places, and things, I thought that I was going to have to like tell people like, no, like you can't hang out with me anymore, I can't talk to you anymore. But really, I think that there was a stigma towards me from other people that I used to use with because when they found out I was in recovery, they backed off. And like I didn't have to, which I guess is a blessing in disguise because I didn't have to make that confrontation. But it was very obvious that they didn't want anything to do with me. And it's interesting because friends that I used to have before I started using more regularly came around more. So there was like stigma towards the ones that were still using. I don't know if it's because they were uncomfortable with my new lifestyle, but then it kind of like it came around to, you know, people that I used to hang out with came back to me.
Well, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I think a lot of times when somebody sees somebody enter into recovery, they don't want to take a look at themselves. So by hanging around with you, it makes them, you know, uncomfortable for that reason, right? Because they don't want to look at their own addiction issues.
Yeah,
right?
And early in recovery, I used to hang out with some of the people that I used to occasionally use with, and they were very respectful. Like they wouldn't use around me or be high around me or under the influence. They liked me as a friend, you know, so they respected me. But as I grew more in my recovery, I'd reach out to them and they wouldn't reach back out to me. So I don't know if I like outgrew that, even though they were respectful for my recovery and they didn't use around me or anything. But, you know, when I would reach out as I was growing in my recovery and they were kind of growing in their nonsense, you know, it just so happened that they didn't reach back out, so.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? So sometimes God does for us what we can't do for ourselves.
Very true.
Right?
Very true.
Yeah. When I got into recovery over 25 years ago, I remember having a conversation with my parents who said, you know, we're going to send you to Buffalo. This way nobody knows, you know, for treatment. I was an inpatient in Buffalo for 6 days.
So that nobody knows, but now you host a recovery talk show. That's so funny to me.
The word has gotten out somehow, right?
So for those of you who don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, it was, the stigma was even worse then, as you can imagine.
Of course.
Especially for a 20-something-year-old girl.
Of course.
You know, to be wrapped up in addiction. It wasn't, my parents had their hands full, right? When they looked at me, they were like, oh my gosh. But, you know, when I got into that treatment setting and I finally had like a little distance between me and the drug, I knew that like I was so on fire for recovery and so excited about my recovery. But I think a lot of times too, we could get confused with people being afraid of the stigma to help themselves and people just being afraid of changing to help themselves. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of people who will say, well, I can't get help because of my job. But it's, you know.
I think that's a cop-out sometimes. Yeah. And I think there's more people that are afraid of the change than there are people afraid of the stigma.
Ooh,
I think, because as a human being, not even just somebody with a substance use disorder, but like human beings don't like change. And if you think you like change, you're lying. Maybe, but we struggle with change. It's hard for us to adapt. We like a routine. We like a simple cycle of life, and I think that more often than not, it's the change piece is like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to change everything. Like, I don't want to do that, and there's fear there. So I think there's more of a fear of change than there is fear of the stigma.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that there's a fear of what do you do if you put down the drugs? Now what? Like, you get so wrapped up in the lifestyle of it that you forget what it's like to be hungry, to actually sleep, to have friends, to have relationships where you can look somebody in the eye. Like you have this like these walls around you, and it becomes very isolating, and it's scary to let those walls down. Yeah. Interesting stuff. All right, stay with us, everybody. We'll be back.
If you want to keep using heroin, that's your business. If you want to stop using heroin, that's our business. Heroin Anonymous, Western New York. For more information, please visit our website at www.heroinanonymous585.org or call our 24-hour hotline to speak to a sober heroin addict at 585-348-8129.
Hi everyone, and welcome back. Today we've been talking about stigma, how it relates to families as well as people with substance use disorder and affecting their ways of getting treatment. And we wanted to talk a little bit about what's been going on in our community and some of the resources we have and changes that have been happening. So, Carol?
Well, first of all, we're wearing our shirts, right? Mission Recovery. And it just goes to show that, things are changing, you know? And people don't say, Mission Recovery, what is that about? They know what it's about because recovery has hit our community hard, just like addiction has hit our community hard. So there are a lot of people recovering right here in Rochester, which is awesome, right?
Yeah, and across the state.
And across the state. Yeah, you were just at an event today doing something for recovery, right?
Yeah, just talking about Youth Voices Matter, but on Sunday I was at an event in Columbia County, if you know where that is.
I don't.
I didn't until I drove there 4 hours. It's just south of Albany, and it's very rural, not a lot really down there. You wouldn't think that there's a lot down there. And my co-worker, Lori, hosted a barbecue event with Youth Voices Matter Columbia County, and they had like 75 people there. Wow. And they had ice cream truck, and they had, barbecue stuff, and different organizations were tabling there, and it was amazing. So I got to go down there and speak. Yes. And then drive 4 hours back home. But Lori made sure that I was, first on the list so that I could get out of there. And I asked her, I said, what do you want me to talk about? When am I speaking? What's this whole thing gonna look like? And she's like, well, you're going first. Go. Okay. But it was really cool. I got to meet some people from, a different part of the state, and it just goes to show that recovery is happening everywhere. Mm-hmm. So that was really cool.
And that goes to speak too to the youth recovery movement that's going on, because recovery isn't just for old people anymore, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of young people. And one of the things that I hear people say sometimes is, what will I do? Like, how boring. It's such a punishment, to be in recovery. I won't be able to use, oh my gosh, what will I do? Stay home and watch TV? Like, what will I do?
I love staying home and watching TV. But there's more to it than just staying home and watching TV.
Let's hope so.
There is. And what's so important is finding that community. Yeah. Because when you have community, there's opportunities to do things together. And it doesn't have to be a Youth Voices Matter big event that we do once or twice a month. It can be calling up somebody else in recovery and saying, hey, do you want to go to the movies? Or hey, do you want to grab dinner? Or hey, do you want to do something? And being able to just find community and be able to do things that way. It doesn't have to be a big shebang, you know?
Right.
You can have fun one-on-one with somebody and go shopping or take a road trip.
Yeah.
So,
you know, I've had some of the best times that I've ever had have been in like groups of people at the last minute saying, we're all going to go to the movies, you know, and everybody's in recovery, right? And there's always like a lot of talking and clamoring and stuff going on, you know, because everybody brings their big personality.
I was invited to go to the movies with you, and that's where we were throwing popcorn at each other, me and another person in recovery. Oh, that was fun. Shenanigans, you know.
Shenanigans, yeah.
Shenanigans. It's fun though. It's fun.
Yeah.
And I know that, you know, when I go out to Albany every other week, just about for work, I go to a young people's meeting, young people's 12-step meeting, and I barely know anybody there. There's a few people that I know that are familiar faces, but we go out to ice cream afterwards. Sometimes we go to this place called DP Do's, and I was like, what's that? It's just a pizza shop. it's just a pizza shop, but it's cool to like be able to find community wherever you go, even if you don't know the people. Like, you have that common bond of being in recovery, and you just make friends super easy. So for anybody out there that's wondering, you know, is life going to be boring, or am I going to be able to make friends? Like, you're going to be able to make friends. A lot of people thought that I was like new to recovery and like a newcomer, and I was like, no, like, I'm just new to the area. I'm here for work, and I was, you know, a lot of the women and some of the men too, like, kind of like wrapped their arms around me and was like, okay, we're gonna do this together, and whenever you're in Albany, you have a safe place to go. So that was cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I can always say about like the 12-step groups. They tend to really embrace you, and I've never really felt like an outsider no matter where I am, you know, and it's kind of fun. Like, I don't know if you get this way, but when they think you're new, you know what I mean? When you go in, they're like, oh, you know, like, and they talk to you like you just came off the street, you know what I mean? It's like, well, I've been in recovery.
And then I wave my multiple years key tag, and I'm like, I've been here a few 24 hours, thank you. But it makes me feel good. It's like, oh, you know, they want to help the next person just as much as I would if somebody came to my meeting in Rochester.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm a huge advocate for when you see somebody new in recovery, no matter if it's a 12-step or any pathway of recovery, when you see somebody new enter a program of recovery, it's so important to like take that first step and introduce yourself, because they're scared. We don't have to be scared to introduce ourselves, because what do we have to lose? You know what I mean? We're making a friend, and we're encouraging somebody to take the next step. So
yeah,
you have to reach out.
I love that, and especially for like women with women and men with men, as they say in the 12-step groups, because I know like you want to feel like you belong, and there's just something special about when somebody comes up to you and says, you know, how are ya? Or they try to make you feel welcome. It makes you feel like you want to go back, right, and get the help that you need.
Yeah, especially being able to like remember names and seeing them again, and like saying, hey, so and so, and like just really being intentional with how we interact with new people in recovery, because that could make or break their early recovery. You know, we have the power to invest in somebody and like encourage them and support them. And it's like we need to do more of that, you know.
I agree. Yeah, I think that's so true. But another thing that I know on the other side of that is that if somebody wants recovery, you can't say anything that's going to make them leave. You know what I mean? Because we are very stubborn when it comes to different issues, right? And one of them is, I know when I made that decision in my mind that I wanted recovery, I don't care if there was a fire going on, there was nothing that was going to stop me from doing the next right thing to get the recovery I needed.
Right, and I think you know, a lot of times people are like, oh, well, I didn't get invited to go out after the meeting, like they must not like me or whatever. So on the flip side of that, not only should we be going up to people, but even if we're scared, we need to, and we're early in recovery, we need to like, hey, I'm new, or hey, raise our hand and get a meeting list with some phone numbers and call them. And that's what I did. I took my meeting list and I had a bunch of women's phone numbers on the back, and I just picked up the phone. Look at me, like this is not a cell phone. I'm dating myself right now because this is just not as aesthetically pleasing. I picked up the phone and I would call people and say, hey, like I met you at this meeting and I'm just practicing this phone thing and just wanted to say hi, maybe we could grab coffee sometime. And people aren't going to put their numbers on the back of a phone list. People are not going to give out their number to you if they don't want you to call them. You know, so like as much as they say like, oh, the phone's gonna weigh 500 pounds, like get over it. You know, it's like they put their numbers down, like we want to talk to you, you know. So
I think that's easier for some people than others. When I was in early recovery, I don't think I went out for coffee with anybody until after I had a year in the program. I didn't even know people did that. You know what I mean? It's like I was so tunnel visioned. I had my meeting list. I'm going. I got my book. I'm like paying attention, and that's just the way. That's just me. That's my personality.
Yeah.
You know. So and everybody kind of evolves at their own pace.
yes.
And
I'm not saying you got to go out to coffee every meeting or
Right.
as soon as you get into recovery, but it's important that at some point, you know, you branch out a little bit and have the meeting after the meeting or the meeting before the meeting. And not, I mean, the meetings are important, the literature's, like all that stuff for recovery is important, but branching out and having some fun, like,
yeah,
you gotta have fun too.
yeah. There's a whole life out there.
Yeah, there is, outside of just going to meetings, which is important. I'm
Yes.
not saying just going to meetings. It's important because I know you're gonna kill me if I don't do. But having fun
Yeah.
and just being in community and talking about recovery principles and stuff like that with other addicts is important.
All right, we gotta go to a break, Carlee.
Okay.
But we'll be back.
If you want to keep using heroin, that's your business. If you want to stop using heroin, that's our business. Heroin Anonymous, Western New York. For more information, please visit our website at www.heroinanonymous585.org or call our 24-hour hotline to speak to a sober heroin addict at 585-348-8129.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching Roc'n Recovery this week. I love having you on the show.
I love being on the show.